Hey guys, welcome back to this week's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I want to talk about the anatomy of short form storytelling. Now this is something that I teach my students at San Jose State University, and quite frankly I think it's a practice and an art that we can all continue to get better at doing. I spend a lot of time on social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, etc., and I still see some companies who struggle with telling stories, especially on social media. And I understand, right? It's not easy to tell stories when you have a digital asset and post copy. How do you tell a story that has a complete thought and that drives some type of action? So today we're going to look and explore a couple of companies on LinkedIn and Twitter. And by the way, this is not meant to criticize any brands out there. And I tried to pick some where I didn't really know anybody who worked there, because that's not the intention. The intention is to, this is also for school, but the intention is to help understand and contextualize what I mean by short form storytelling. Now, in Hollywood, there's this concept called a setup and a payoff. Now, oftentimes I call it a lead up and a payoff, but for the sake of this video, let's use the term setup. And a setup actually happens in Hollywood all the time. So if you watch any Netflix show or anything on Hulu or any of the networks, every movie, every series, there's several setups and payoffs within a character engagement or within the entire plot of a movie. Certainly there's a setup and payoff, but even there's little small ones in between each series and in between different people and settings within a story. And so I like to use that as a way to really explain more about the anatomy of how to contextualize what a setup and a payoff is within the context, though, of the news feed. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so let's go ahead and define what a setup actually means. A setup is hinting at the action or obstacles that's going to come, right? So it plants information, it deepens the reader's sense of anticipation. You are essentially laying the groundwork for the rest of the story. So if you think about it through the lens of a social media content, you're scrolling through your feed, the video, the image, the animated graphic is the setup. You are telling one piece of the story. You're trying to get that attention. You're trying to spark that curiosity so that the reader then shifts his or her attention to the post copy. And that's what the payoff is. It's the post copy. All right, so let's first go ahead and define what a setup actually is, and then talk about what it means through the context or the lens of social content. So a setup is essentially a hint. It is telling the reader that there is something coming. You're laying the groundwork, you're laying the foundation, you're giving one piece of a story that is meant to spark some type of curiosity from the reader or the user. And so in the case of social media, someone is scrolling through their feed, they see an image or with words on it, or they see a short video or an animated graphic. That is the setup. You are sparking their curiosity, and hopefully they will then move their eyes and look up at the post copy, and that is the payoff. So let's go ahead and define what a payoff is. Now, a payoff, a lot of times it's referred to as a reveal or discovery, revelation, surprises. It's a twist in many cases in Hollywood. Many times it is anything that has been set up that is now fully realized. Okay, so in comedy, this is a punchline, right? The comedian will spend hours setting up the joke, and that final twist at the end, the payoff, is essentially the punchline. Okay, and in social media, this just simply is a very well written post. Now, this is the hard thing to do, right? Because a lot of people are trained to write, long form content. If you're a PR, you are writing content with a structure, right? And you set up the characters, you set up the plot, the setting, you have your conclusions, etc. The hardest part about working in social media, regardless of where or what you do, is being able to tell a story, a short story, within the context of a setup, the creative, and the payoff, the post copy. So let's go ahead and talk through a couple of examples of a couple brands that hopefully I don't offend anyone. It's not my intention, but I do want to talk about some best practices that I've seen and things that you should avoid if you are managing content or responsible for creating content and engagement within LinkedIn, Twitter, and the other channels. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into it. And so this is the first example I wanted to quickly show you. And what you're going to notice here is two screenshots. The one on the left is what I saw in my feed. And then on the right is after I clicked see more, this is the rest of the post. And the first thing that really stood out to me here is that there's just way too much content, right? You have on the left, well, on both examples, you have the image and you have a lot of text, right? You have a few different sentences. It looks to me like a paragraph. Then you also have the description under by request demo, which is kind of like your call to action. And then you have your post copy. And the good news here is that they're not replicating the post copy on the image and or the description. So it's all unique kind of content, but it really doesn't tell a story to me, right? Because the setup to me is you deserve verified direct data. The payoff should be, download this white paper and learn, or request a demo and learn how to solve this business problem. And so to me, that is not really effective storytelling because it's just way too complicated. And on the right, it's just, again, I had to click see more in order to get the context of all the post copy. And that's just, to me, not a best practice. You want to be very short and concise when you are creating post copy because you're trying to deliver and drive some type of action from the user. So moving on to this next company, Elusive, and very similar to the first example, but a couple of other points here. Now, looking at the setup and payoff, right? The setup is that there's a webinar, there's a call to action that says, watch the webinar, or you can learn more. And then there's some content at the top in the post copy that says, if you can't trust your identities, you can't have zero trust. Watch our on-demand webinar with Forrester, analyst Steve Turner, and our blank. So I kind of miss out on who actually is part of the webinar other than this analyst who works for Forrester. Now, I was able to see the entire content or post by clicking see more. Now, in this situation, this is a sponsored post, right? This is a piece of content that they're trying to drive more viewers to this webinar. The problem is that when you're using hashtags in this regard, if I were to click zero trust and go to LinkedIn and see all the posts with zero trust, then I'm not necessarily going to click the back button and then click watch webinar and enroll, right? So you're giving the user way too many options to not register. You want to have one call to action. So it's the link. It's going to link. You shouldn't tag anybody. You shouldn't add hashtags because you're going to have it's going to affect your conversion rate, right? By doing so. So again, not the greatest example of being able to, tell a story and drive some type of action through the headline or the post copy, in which case is the payoff. I just used that three different synonyms to explain the same thing. But that's my point, is you want to make it clear and concise when you want a user to do something. Now, the next example is Reddit. And this is actually a lot better because Reddit, the content on the left here with the actual image and the words in the image, it gives you all the information, right? It's telling me when the webinar is, the date, it's giving me the title of the webinar and the fact that they want us to register now. The problem is the post copy, right? The post copy is just way too long. I want to know, what am I going to learn by attending this webinar, Reddit Radar, right? So it's some type of report, but they're going on about Wall Street bets and they're passionate users, and that's great, right? That's great that they're giving a shout out to their Reddit users. But they're losing people because that's a lot. They're very hard to read, right? Even when you click see more, now what they've done is they've tagged a few different people, Catherine and Annie, to do a deep dive analysis on these topics. Now, I actually really want to attend this webinar, and I am, because I'm fascinated by content and analytics, and especially those analytics within Reddit. But to me, this is not the best way to write content because they do have a lot of other hashtags. This is a sponsored piece of content, and so you want to get people to register now. So you want to tell them what they're going to learn in a quick. Don't make them click see more because you're going to lose them. Your drop off rate's going to be extremely high. So moving on to the next example are a couple of ones that I found were a little bit better, right? So on the left, you have stream sets, the dollar and cents of data ops. So if I'm in data ops, if I work in IT, then I already know what data ops is, right? And so to me, that is already some type of, well, it's clever, right? The dollars and cents, but it's also very relevant to somebody who is going to be working within the data infrastructure. And then the post copy is simple, right? It is, how do you provide business value from your data projects? ? Read this handy guide to find out. I might say something even more simple that's like, read this handy guide to find out how to drive business value from your data projects, right? Something like that. So it's one sentence. it's not very wordy, and it's to the point, right? And that is the full story. The story is that you're going to learn by registering for this webinar or downloading this report. You're going to learn how to get business value from your data projects. And then on the right is a company called ServiceNow. Predictive AI Ops prevents issues from becoming problems is on the creative. Learn how to predict and prevent issues and automate resolutions is the description. And then the post copies, predictive AI Ops knows where issues are likely to arise and resolves them before they can. See how. So again, now it's not a complete story because they're not showing us that how to solve these problems, but they're telling us by registering, by downloading, we will then be able to learn how to solve those problems. Now, a couple of other examples here. On the left, we have a company called Teeds. And this to me is a strong best practice because that 84% of holiday shoppers will purchase gifts through shoppable ads. That is an amazing data point, and the creative is really nice, and it is telling that is the lead up, right? That is the setup. As somebody who works in e-commerce or maybe in retail, they're going to want to know more, right? How can I get more information about this particular data point? And then the post copy is, with e-commerce more important than ever, how will your brand make an impact on key shopping days, right? So then you might shift to where it says download our insights deck to learn more. So this is one of the better pieces of content that I've seen recently on LinkedIn, because the setup is a data point, right? It's sparking curiosity amongst the reader. It's setting the foundation for the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is simply shopping is more important. E-commerce is important. How will your brand make an impact? You can learn by downloading our deck and getting our insights. And then affirm is one more. The post copy, well, let's start with the creative. Let your customers pay their way. Okay, get started. More choice means more checkouts. Increase conversions when you give your customers more option than pay in for with Affirm, right? So it's a lot more simple, right? There's not, and I understand, right? A lot of folks who work in PR are going to want, messaging. Oh, we need this message. We need this data point. We need this, narrative to be weaved into this content. And that's not what customers care about. They want to know how this content is going to drive value for what they do and in their business. Is it driving utility? Is it giving them news? Is it essentially helping them solve a business problem? And that is not done through brand messaging. Okay, so it can align to brand messaging, but it has to deliver value to the user. And then just a couple more, and then we'll move on. So on the left, you have a company called OrgView. It says too many. Well, let's start with the post copy or the image, and which is a lot. Discover 4 steps to more effective business transformation. Download the guide. They have a nice little graphic with building the adaptive enterprise, another messaging point. Then they have it again, building the adaptive enterprise, how to run an effective business transformation program. So they're already replicating the content in the creative with the content in the description below, right? So it's kind of saying the same thing over and over. And then it says, too many business transformation initiatives struggle to meet their objectives. Download our guide to learn how you can improve the odds for you. I think when I clicked to see more, there was another, maybe a few words, so it wasn't that long. But in this particular situation, the setup and the payoff is all jumbled, right? I don't really know what is what. There's no linear path for me to follow to comprehend what it is OrgView is trying to tell me. And then obviously I know they want me to download the guide, but why? Why should I download the guide, right? This to me is just way too many brand messages. And then lastly on the right, I mean, no offense towards Open Influence. I think I know someone who works there. So please, if you watch this video, don't take it personal. But this is just terrible. These bullet points, I feel like I'm looking, especially if I was looking on a mobile device, there was no way I can see any of those bullet points, right? So limit the bullet points, right? Tell me what I'm supposed to learn. What do you want me to take away from this creative content? All I can see is home shopping, live shopping, and then bullet points under each one. Really long bullet points, by the way. Some with periods and some with not, which is not a good thing. Okay, and I'm not a grammar crazy person because I mess up all the time, but I notice it now and not good. Anyhow, so looking back up here, this, by the way, is an image, I believe, so it's not clickable. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in just a second, but you'll see here the post copy. The concept that started on TV about 40 years ago is having a renaissance in social media. learn here with this free trend report. Now, it's not bad at all. But the thing is, they have hashtags. Why do they have hashtags if they want someone to download the report, right? You should only give them the ability to create the link. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to a couple live examples. So we're gonna migrate over to LinkedIn. So let's go ahead and do that now.